This morning, when I opened the TV, I heard the sound of sirens in Ukraine. So this one it is called Good Morning Ukraine. I thought first that I'm gonna do a pamphlet like Good Morning Vietnam. However, I don't have the voice, the talent, and basically, frankly, the disposition for that. I played earlier the sound of sirens in Kiev and in 16 other Ukrainian cities that are under siege, under bombardment. So good morning, Ukraine. How is the weather out there? Sunny, with the rain of bombs. People are scrambling to get out of the cities. We are under siege here. Men, women, and children are looking for shelter in the metro tunnels. We feel like it is the time of the Second World War, not 2022. The Russian planes are bombing us. The Russian army is surrounding us, and the Russian soldiers are killing us. Wow, I'm so surprised to hear that because, I heard the speech of President Putin, Vladimir Putin. He said loud and clear to the world that they are not a threat. And that's quote unquote. They are purely defensive, quote unquote. They are peacekeepers. Leo, you are naive. It seems to me that he learned from Donald Trump. They like each other, Donald Trump called the people that assaulted the Capitol building on January 6th insurgency. He called them tourists, huggers and kissers. What do you expect? Peacekeepers. In Ukraine, it is supposed to be spring. What do you mean like spring? Like spring in Budapest in 1956? Exactly, Leo, you got it. Spring, like in Ukraine, like spring in Budapest, 1956, when the Russian tanks entered Budapest. What do you mean like spring? Like spring in Prague in 1968? Yes, Leo, you got it. It is exactly like spring in Prague in 1968 when the Russian tanks and the Russian troops enter Prague. It is like the Arab Spring 2010. Yeah, some kind of that. In China is also spring, the advent of spring. In China is the year of the tiger. In China were the Olympics, when during the Olympics it was supposed to be a truce. The war was supposed to stop. In China there are still the Olympics, the Paralympics. Paralympics, the way they call them. And yet the war, didn't stop. In Chinese culture, tiger symbolize bravery and strength. Chinese people often refer to them as spirited dragon and dynamic tiger. How do I know that? From a speech of Mr. President Xi Jinping for the Davos Convention. Mr. President Xi Jinping said, "To meet the challenges that face our humanity, we must add wings to the dragon, and act to the courage and strength with the courage and strength of the tiger." So that's the recipe. Wings to the dragon, courage and strength of the tiger. Yeah. So there in Ukraine, in those 16 cities, when you are bombed with bombs, when the Russians are killing your soldiers, when you are crowded down in the metro stations, don't worry then. Be happy. It's the year of the tiger. It's going to be great. It's going to be great, as the other President Donald Trump used to say to the world. Don't worry, be happy. Quote unquote, when the tide is coming. Mr. President Xi Jinping said that when the tide is coming, all the boats would rise. Don't you feel better now, there, under bombs, under siege, in the subway stations, surrounded by the Russian army, bombed by the Russian plane, occupied by the Russian tanks, like spring in Budapest, like spring in Prague? Excuse me, what? Vladimir Putin invaded your country? Vladimir Putin started a war in Europe with far-reaching consequences? The Russians are bombing your fathers, your mothers, and your kids? Mr. President Xi Jinping called this in his speeches respect for the little guy. He always claimed he has respect for the little guy. Other countries should have respect one for other, should stay together in times of difficulties, when people are suffering in Wuhan, when people are suffering in Kiev. Don't worry, be happy. There in Ukraine, don't worry, be happy. Mr. President Xi Jinping told to the world, and implicit to you guys in Ukraine, that you are not alone. You are not in 192 small boats. We are all together on the face of this planet in a big boat, together with Ukraine, together with China, with big China, massive China, powerful China, important China, China with a big wall that you can see from the moon, China with the terracotta warriors, China with 1.4 billion people, China with 95 million members of the Communist Party, that they are looking the other way today. China, member of the United Nations Security Council. That kind of China. And what is China doing to fulfill its mission on the face of this planet? Some Ukrainian people under the bombing of Russian planes might ask, rhetorically. I read that the mission of the United Nations Security Council is to prevent conflict, prevent, before they happen, and to maintain peace and stability of the world, of that big boat that Mr. President Xi Jinping was talking about. In fact, beside those speeches full of metaphors and words, China shook the hand of the invader. China signed contracts to buy their gas, enabling them to withstand the Western sanction, economical sanction. I think after the Kiev will fail. China will go to the United Nations and put there, as we saw in history so ridiculous, a banner, mission accomplished. Chinese mission accomplished. And thinking about that, I have a Leo question. Did Mr. President Xi consider the fact that the bloody war in Ukraine, that the bloody war in Europe will destabilize all the markets and economies around the world, including the economy of China? Inflation, instability, shortness of supplies, bottlenecks of shipments, panic in the stock market are just a few things that can happen and will happen if the wars go on and on. How do you know that, Leo? Are you an expert in world economics? No, I'm not. I watch TV. And I saw that in the year 2008, when the market crashed on Wall Street, the economical recession was felt not only on the Wall Street, not only by the American bankers, not only in America, but all around the world. All the financial markets felt the ripple effect from America to Europe, from Europe to Asia, in all 5 continents symbolized by the 5 Olympic circles. I'm thinking about my speeches and I asked myself what part of English you did not understand when I said, in simple words, do not disturb my circles. The Paralympic Games is a question. The Paralympic Games are less Olympic than the Olympic Games? They're supposed to have the Paralympic Games in China, in Berlin, in Beijing. Those athletes deserve less respect from Mr. Putin and from China than the Olympic ones? Why Mr. Xi Jinping didn't insist to President Putin not to start a war during the Paralympic Games? It would have been a sign of respect for those athletes, for their effort and dedication. Now, instead of watching the Paralympic Games in peace and admiration, I am watching the invasion of Ukraine, the siege of Kiev, and most probably the fall of Kiev. This is another Leo question. In this, I don't understand. I'm confused. In this big boat of Mr. President Xi was talking about, for the sake of our common humanity, how does it work when the Ukrainian people became sad? These are the lyrics from a very beautiful, moving, heartwarming, patriotic Ukrainian song. Ukraine, my country, their country became sad. When Ukraine became sad, China is happy. The good, friendly, hardworking, intelligent, welcoming people of China, as they are portrayed on CGTN, China Global Television Network, are not also sad for their brothers and sisters that there are bombs right now as I speak in many, many, many cities in Ukraine? It's a simple question. I ask myself, why your president didn't come out and address the world, speak the truth about the premeditated invasion of a peaceful country. Tell the Chinese people how this war will affect the Chinese economy. This will be a speech without metaphors, a speech of truth and simple words, a speech of a great leader that I will listen with one condition. I will take notes in my modesty with one condition. If Mr. President Xi Jinping will finish his speech with two words in Russian, "Нет войны", no to war. That is the speech that the entire world is looking at China and waiting for. Civilized war. You call yourself being a multi-millennial kind of civilization, civilized people. Where is your heart and your civilization when you need them? I ask a simple question. Is China a force of good on the face of this planet? This was the time to show that China is a force of good on the face of this planet. Why in this time of great difficulties Mr. President Xi Jinping is absent on the international scene? All the other leaders of the world try to bring some diplomacy, some peace, some rationale. There at Kremlin, talking, calling, discussing, debating, asking, even asking from the United Nations from the bottom of the heart, Mr. President Putin, to stop the war. Now is the time for Mr. President Xi Jinping to lead. Now it is time for China as a country, as a nation, to show its greatness. If there is one. I ask myself rhetorically and philosophically, how would Mr. President Xi would feel if the Russian soldiers, the Russian military, would cross the border of China, bomb Beijing and 16 other Chinese cities, and designating him target number one, as I saw on TV they did with the Ukrainian leadership, and their family, his family, target number two. How would Mr. President Xi Jinping feel about it? How would Chinese people feel about their country being invaded and bombed? How would the Chinese people, the Chinese nation, would feel if the Russian army would like to bring regime change? Because suddenly they don't like the policy of Beijing, the politics of Beijing. and would like to change that through military force. It's exactly what is happening in Ukraine. How would Chinese people feel if the Russian military would take by military force a piece of their country and then another piece of their country, and then they will bomb 15 cities and the capital? I know the answer of those questions. I told you there are rhetorical questions. Well, I'm sure they would not like that. I am very sure that they will not approve of that. I am very sure that they will not enable something like that to happen. Yet it's exactly what you did in respect to the Ukrainian people, the Russian invasion and the Ukrainian people. So, let me see if I can do this. Good morning, China! Good morning, Beijing. Good morning, Mr. President Xi Jinping. Now that we are awake, we had our morning drinks, coffee, tea, whatever we have. I have a question for you. Are there any TVs in China? Did you hear the sirens, as I did this morning, the sirens announcing aerial bombing of Kiev? I can assure you that the Ukrainian people did not like that. I can assure you this basic logic that the Ukrainian people do not approve of that. I'm sure that the Ukrainian people would not enable an attack on China. And I have something else to myself that's almost a personal question now. Why is the Chinese suffering during the Second World War when the Chinese cities were invaded by the Japanese army? Why that kind of Chinese suffering is more important than the suffering of the Ukrainian people when their cities are invaded by the Russian army? For me, leaving aside number statistic, it is the same kind of human suffering. The siege of Leningrad, the Russians suffered greatly. The invasion of Nanjing, the Chinese suffered greatly. And the bombing of Kiev, as I speak right now. As I speak, most probably Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, is falling right now. And another question, what kind of dragon and what kind of tiger is that? What kind of spirited dragon What kind of courageous and brave tiger? The way I see it, the spirited dragon and the brave tiger are not at the level of the cats, the famous cats of Deng Xiaoping. With the famous quote, I don't care what color the cat is, black cat, white cat, as much as the cat is catching mice. I don't care. In 2022, is the dragon has wings, is the tiger has claws, as long as the president of China will pick up the phone, call Vladimir Putin, and stop the war. It is a sad moment for Ukraine, and it is a sad moment for China. It is already a PR disaster for Moscow. I don't want to see a PR disaster for China. I honestly don't. Please let me translate this for you. Apparently my book is not good for the world, for America, for Russia, for China. Let me translate this for you. A PR disaster for China will mean a massive loss of prestige on the international stage. All of this can be avoided if Mr. President Xi Jinping will come out as a great leader of a great nation, and lead the world with two simple words. Нет войны, no to war. Thank you, Mr. President. There is a postscriptum, one more thing, a little love letter to my good friends from CGTN, great journalist. I enjoy watching beautiful images, beautiful people, intelligent. However, there is a moment when you feel like puking. I mean puking, okay? When so-called journalists became a blatant kind of propaganda that I'm so used with it from the time of Ceausescu. I wake up today, I watch CGTN because I like them, because I'm interested in what they are doing, what they are discussing. By the time the cities of Ukraine are under siege, the people of Ukraine are dying or panicking, trying to protect their kids and their families. They are taking a hard look at the democracy in America. A piece of journalism that has some truth in it. Yet, it's so hypocritical, so dishonest. Especially that I looked what they are talking there, and me, the short Romanian guy, with very limited technical abilities and possibilities, I talked about those subjects, and I talked about those subjects, and I talked about those subjects, and I talked about those subjects 100 times more than the entire fucking CGTN. I talked about the broken system of the American democracy, the two parties, the dysfunctional leadership, the economical problems of America, the racism, the extremism. I talked about all of this. Almost every second day I talk about something that America has to improve. America has to go back on that hill. Yet today, the representative of America was at the United Nations to stop a war. The question remains standing for China this time. Where was China? when the representative of America wanted to stop a war. Where was China when this time the information, the intelligence, the way you call it, the intelligence was spot right of the Americans. They said it's going to be an invasion, it is an invasion. This is the typical manipulation of what about. Oh, they are bombing Kiev. Let's talk about the dysfunctional American democracy. Like Leo the Tyler didn't talk about that every second day for the last 3-4 years. I covered the subject. You should be ashamed of yourself. This time you're supposed to talk how to stop a war, about the human suffering that is as important, as meaningful, as regretful, as sad as the Chinese suffering was in your history. And there is a postscriptum, a little word, just a short note to my friends, the Serbians. When your bridges were bombed, I saw people staying on the bridges and saying, "Excuse us, we didn't know it was invisible," or protecting your bridges against bombs falling from the sky, American bombs, NATO bombs, bombs falling from the sky. I was impressed. My heart was there with you as much as I could. And I talked about that. I know that a huge percentage of Serbians are supporting Putin because they hate the Americans. One simple idea about that. The people that I saw on TV, the families of Ukrainian people crawling down like rats in the subways. I said this not as an insult, as a huge insult to our common humanity, not to them, to us, to you, to China, to every part of the civilized society, to the Russian that started this war. The President Putin that started this war. Those good families, they did not throw that kind of bombs on your bridges, on your families, on your cities. And the fact that you kill each other the way you did there, you should be ashamed of yourself. You should be ashamed of yourself that now you are not screaming from the bottom of your lungs to stop this war. The 50% that apparently Russians are supporting Vladimir Putin, they should be ashamed of themselves. Because it will be their fathers and their brothers and their sons and even daughters that they are going to come back in body bags from the assault on Ukraine. There is nothing good that will come out for Russia from invading another country. You should be ashamed of yourself.